All right, folks, hello and welcome to the video. If you're just joining us, then obviously you are just now hearing or have heard very recently about the response from Riot to the LSPCA in regards to the current walkout and the delay of the summer split. I'm going to jump just kind of right into this whole topic so we can discuss some of the bigger points going on here, but I'll briefly kind of go through the timeline. So obviously the LSPCA announced that the main stage rosters for all the LCS teams were going to stage a walkout and that they would not be playing games. That then very quickly developed into them asking for what we call scab players, or what we call picket line breakers, or people who step across the line to take advantage of an opportunity. They ask those players to also not consider playing on emergency substitution teams that the organizations were trying to put together. In response to that, the LCS temporarily suspended the rank requirement for players to play in the LCS, and we're even going to allow players to play from remote.
Yeah, but I've heard from multiple sources within an hour of the show starting that Riot is officially suspending the requirements to play in the LCS. So now you can be of any rank and you can play from anywhere. You can play from home even on Thursday if you would like to be a pro player.
But that did not last very long, and so they have come out with the current statement that you're going to see right now. I'm not going to go through all of it. I just want to kind of very quickly hit on some points. And really, it's in regards to the request that the LSPCA made. And in all honesty, I'm going to have to side with Riot on this one in terms of their responses to some of these points. I think they made some very logical arguments about why they cannot acquiesce to a bunch of these demands. I think it's very fair from their perspective. Obviously, I have still a problem with the first half of the article about them potentially allowing the LCS to lapse into a point where they would delay the season so long that they would give up qualification for Worlds and not run a summer split. I think that is absolutely the wrong attitude to have, and I think that's potentially a problem, but we'll go into that in just a minute. I want to start just first with the LSPCA points that you're going to be seeing here. And the first one was in regards to instituting the Valorant style promotion and relegation between the LCS and the NACL. Their response is obviously that expanding it would just run counter to the partnership model that they have with the LCS teams. It would essentially further dilute the revenue that they share, because it's a 50% model, and it would make it really, really difficult for them to sustain the league. I have to agree with this, right? Obviously, if you're spending 50% of the revenue that the LCS is making and you're sharing that with the teams in addition to the cost that they have with paying the slot fees, then it becomes very, very difficult to sustain the league. There are a number of options I think that they could take or use, or that they have, in order to kind of alleviate this, but I think the fact remains right now is that they're just not willing to do that any further, which also kind of runs in parallel with the sort of additional ask that was kind of not written, but that I think a lot of people have been calling for, which is, oh, will you guys consider expanding the league? I think this is a pretty good indication that they are in fact not willing to expand the league any further to try and accommodate more teams, if they're using the logic about revenue. This is kind of a hard point to argue. Obviously, the money is a limited factor, especially right now, as we start to go on what I guess a lot of people are starting to call an esports winter. But I think a logical response to the ask, and I think very, very difficult for anyone to kind of contest that there isn't more money available. And the second one was that Riot guarantees LCS minimum contracts for the following year. I think I'm 50-50 on this one. So obviously you want the teams to be allowed to decide who gets a shot, but we also have to consider that right now there isn't any guarantee of players coming from the NACL system to make it onto a main stage team, not even for the 5 players that actually win the NACL, which I think is a little bit disappointing. So it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. I see it from Riot's perspective, where they don't want to interfere with the team's right to determine who gets to play on those teams and so on and so forth. But I also think that there needs to be some guaranteed way for these players that succeed in the NACL, at minimum the players that are on the winning team, to somehow get a guaranteed spot. on a main stage team, but that's difficult because then you're getting into murky waters of, well, what is the right of the team versus what is the right of the league and the players. So interesting to see how they'll navigate that one. I don't think the LSPCA is LCSPA is going to let that one go. That's, I think, a 50-50 issue, but I think subject to a number of the other problems that they have right now. The 3/4 continuity rule, I think, is a non-factor right now because the LCS has not removed its requirement for 3 North American players, or at least legal North American players, or not that's with a visa or residency or whatever, and then 2 imports. Like, that rule's still in place. So honestly, a non-factor. I think Riot's fine in that one. I don't think there's really anything that they need to do for that. Yes, you would like to see NACL players getting 3/5 of the spot, but in reality, that's just not how it works. There are too many veteran players and too many established players within the league for that to be an absolute rule. Yes, there's plenty of teams that will have spots on their roster because not every team is going to finish in top 5 at the end of the year, but I think regardless, like, it's just really difficult for the LCS to make that happen. So they would rather just leave the import slot rule and have that take care of it and let the teams decide in terms of who in North America is going to get those shots. I think that's fair. I think that Riot has no business changing that rule. Riot to commit for revenue pool for player salaries of $300,000 per NACL team. Look, so the thing is the teams already pay a decent salary. Yes, it's minimum salary. It's worse because it's in California, which I think is a huge problem with the whole money aspect. Yeah, $300,000 per NACL team would be a good investment, but the problem is what are the teams going to do with that money? Right, because this is the problem that we have right now, where they're getting these massive paychecks from Riot, regardless of whether or not they make a profit. I think is neither here nor there, because that's up to the teams to make sure they turn a profit. But they're getting these massive checks from the LCS, and they're spending them in crazy ways that aren't necessarily related to the talent. And I don't think that the talent itself is getting a lot of this money. But for Riot's perspective, like, they don't just want to be throwing $300,000 away for no reason and not seeing that go directly into investment of the talent development pipeline. I support that in a sense. $300,000 per team I think is probably a bit much. I would say half that would be reasonable, $150,000, in addition to what the players are already paid, just to make sure that they're making proper investments and things like that. But I definitely don't want to see them be given just a massive paycheck because, every single organization that exists within the LCS pipeline, within the LCS ecosystem, has shown that they don't know how to responsibly spend that money, and I don't support Riot just throwing away money. I think they need to show an investment that they haven't shown previously in terms of helping support tier 2 leagues and supporting that pipeline system. But obviously, I definitely think that they don't want to just start throwing away money for no reason. $300,000 is a lot. I agree that's probably too much, but they do need to be doing something. If for no other reason than to show that they are actually invested, given the last 72 hours and just how much of a shit show that has been, and how badly Riot has navigated this. They need to show that they're invested in some way. So something is due, I think. Allowing the LCS orgs to partner with affiliates for cost sharing. I mean, what are we counting as affiliates here, I guess, is the big question. Because all the teams have partnerships with all kinds of sponsors and stuff like that. A lot of them also work with collegiate level teams, amateur teams. So there's a lot of cross mobility between some of these NACL teams and stuff like that. I mean, that's really not something that Riot can just force, right? Like, the orgs have the right to sort of seek whatever sponsorship they want, whatever advertising opportunities they have. The Riot is not limiting where they can get their players from, short of a rank requirement. So this one I don't particularly understand from the LCSPA. I mean, it's not like Riot is actively limiting what their options are in terms of player recruiting and stuff like that, or what their financial partnerships are going to be. Like, you can't have, I think, I'm not sure what the limit is in terms of total number they can have, or what it is in terms of having the same sponsors that sponsored the main broadcast. I think that they can't have the same ones. Like, you can't have a State Farm, or you can't have a Bud Light, something or not Bud Light, but Red Bull or something. But outside of that, I mean, Riot is not limiting them. The second half of what I want to talk about right now, and more the concerning part for me, obviously the LCSPA requests are important, but I think secondary to one of the main problems that we're facing right now in terms of what's happening with Riot's response, which is that they are comfortable with allowing a 2-week window to come and go, and then if they cannot reach an agreement, then they will shut down the season. Now, obviously, from a logistics standpoint, they are absolutely correct. Like, there's no way to run a league and after a 2-week delay like that, like they just can't. You're not going to be able to qualify for Worlds and get through a regular season unless you run a reduced season, which I think they could do. They just simply run a 2-week shorter season. So I think that that's not unreasonable. Yeah, it's I think probably total of 6 games per team that they wouldn't be playing, but it is what it is. If that's what you have to do in order to have a season, then you should entertain that idea. But the part that concerns me more, really, than anything, is the fact that the LCS is willing to entertain the idea of the summer season not happening, which I think is unacceptable. I think that's a genuine problem. I think the fact that they have such a "we will not come to the table to negotiate" attitude is speaking volumes for how they view the LCS right now and where their mentality is in terms of finding a solution. The fact that they are willing to go scorched earth, essentially, because that's what this is, because everybody loses in this situation. There's nobody that wins if we don't have a summer season, I think is extremely problematic. It's obscene, it's disappointing, and it's very, very aggravating as a fan. Now there's going to be a lot of people saying, well, maybe this is just entirely the players' fault, like they just need to shut up and play. But the fact of the matter is they're fighting for something that they believe. They're trying to affect change within the league itself. They're trying to get better conditions. They are trying to, secure the future of not only for themselves, but for the players around them. And Riot is full stop refusing to negotiate with them. And in that instance, Riot's in the wrong. In this particular instance, this is their fault in terms of being so unwilling to talk to the players and work with the teams to find an amicable solution for everybody. Is not acceptable for an esports organization, is not acceptable for them as a tournament organizer. And I think at some point, bigger and more powerful people are probably going to have to step in here, and calmer heads are going to have to prevail, which is to say it's probably going to have to be the game side stepping in rather than the esports side, because ultimately at the end of the day, the game executives take power over everything else. And if they step in and say, hey, this is how this is going to work, then the esports side will have to follow along no matter what. And I think that that's probably where we're headed in terms of more powerful people having to step in and make a decision or force, some sort of opportunity where they can, all the parties involved can start to try and work together to find a solution, because this isn't going to work. Because right now we're a train that's fixing to derail and head off a cliff. I know that the LCSPA is committed, at least to this first week. My one concern is that they are seeing this second week and probably the loss of the entire second half of their paychecks, and obviously the loss of opportunity, because if they fail to if the organizations fail to field teams outside of that 2 weeks, they are going to take penalties, right? Riot is not saying that they're waiving those penalties. They are saying that they are allowing a 2-week window, and that if nothing constructive happened, it's back to the way they were, and so the teams are going to take penalties, season's going to be canceled, and we're not going to Worlds this year, which is unacceptable for everybody involved: the fans, the players, the coaches, or the teams, organizations, and for the LCS. I think that would be the absolute worst case scenario, and hopefully that is not what we're going to get. But Riot, the LCS specifically, has got to get to a point where they are going to negotiate with all the parties involved, because this just simply isn't going to work. That's really all that I have for this video in terms of the update. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming out about this in terms of what people think is going to happen and whether or not we're actually going to lose the season. My personal prediction is that after this first week, there will be a couple days of calm. Now that we know that we are not getting the first week of the LCS, there will be a couple days of calm, and each side of this, each party that has a side in this issue will sort of go back to the drawing board a little bit and figure it out. What are the hardline items that they really want? And then hopefully the organizations, the players, and the LCS and Riot will come to a bargaining table being ready to be a little bit more receptive to what each side wants, and hopefully they will work out an agreement. That is my prediction, because I think nobody in this whole thing, at least I hope, between Riot and the players, is willing to allow a scorched earth policy to continue where we lose out on Worlds qualification and where we do not get a summer season. I know most people probably haven't bought tickets or made plans to go to the summer finals in terms of traveling, because I know that the tickets won't be available until tomorrow, because today is the 30th. Or no, it won't be available till Thursday, because Thursday is the 1st, which would be which would have been the start of the season. So, but we'll have to see how these guys are going to navigate it. I got to tell you, as a fan, it's just really nerve-wracking. Makes me very, very nervous. It's also super disheartening, man. You know, you try and support your league and your players, as much as you can. Maybe sometimes to the point of obscenity, but this doesn't feel good. And it's been really weird, because over the last couple of weeks, there's been a lot to feel really bad about as an LCS fan. Between the loss of certain players, organizations either leaving the LCS or getting bought out, the drama with the change of the times that the broadcast is happening, sort of the loss in viewership. I mean, it's been one thing after other, body blow after body blow. And then, we go to MSI and it doesn't go really well for us. Then we get back here and we're thinking, okay, well, maybe we'll just get a summer split. Yeah, some of the stuff isn't great, and then this whole thing with the NACL blows up, and it's just been problem after problem for like 3.5 months now. And to have this whole issue, with Riot and the players and the organizations, kind of being at each other's throats right now, just compounds this issue. And as a fan, you hear it for a long time. We have been hearing it for a long time for LCS fans that, oh, the LCS is dying, it's on its way out, this, that, and the other, yada, and so forth. Man, but to be in a position where it is not off the table that not only will your organization just not show up to an international tournament, but that a whole season, a whole split is not going to happen, it's rough, man. And I really don't have words to describe this just sort of awful, nasty feeling that I have about the way that this whole thing has gone. I'm disappointed in Riot in the way that they've handled it. I'm aggravated at the players for doing this now, but I understand that there's no other way that they could have done it. I think, or there's likely no other way that they could have done it to make an impact. Something like this in the offseason wouldn't have worked. I don't know where we go from here. And I think the LCS's reputation is going to be stained by this for a very long time, because these moves just don't make sense. And that's the thing I've been trying to rack my brain about in terms of like, why are we doing this? Why is the LCS doing this? Who is making these decisions? Because these are the wrong decisions to make. This is a bad time to be making these decisions, right before a split starts. Save this for the offseason if you ever do it at all, and then give people time to work it out. But, I'm looking at this, and every decision that Riot is making with the LCS is just the wrong decision. It's like, you have a clear-cut path between left goes right, and if you go right, it's the wrong decision, and then they're just going, okay, well, I'm going to take the wrong path every time. Like these are really bad errors to be making, and it's not hard to see why they're bad. Not only does it look bad optically, but just it is categorically, technically, and logistically bad in terms of the changes that they're making that is damaging not just the NACL, but North American League of Legends professionally as a whole. And it's really confusing. Someone said this on the Travis Gafford podcast on the talk show the other day, but I think it bears repeating. They talked about how the LCS is normally slow to make changes, And it's normally because they're hesitant to do things, and it's because they're not certain about the way things are going to play out, or they don't want to make drastic mistakes. But in the last week, a couple weeks, they have been so willing to make these colossal, life-changing, league-shattering decisions and change rules and just do everything they can to fight players in such a way that it just doesn't make sense. It's not in keeping with anything that they've ever done before, and I really don't understand why it's happening now. I don't understand what's changed in the last couple months where it's just suddenly this brand new entity, this brand new beast that we've never seen, the LCSB. Part of me wonders where it's been this whole time, and part of me is wondering why now. What is the motivation? Why do they have to win at all cost? And what does winning look like for them? These are questions that I've been asking for a while now. But that's the end of my rant. I'm getting off my soapbox. That's the end for this video. I will let you guys know if there are any further developments, and we'll keep you posted. And I'll probably make another video if I do see something else happen. But until then, I will see you guys next time. And hopefully when I do, it will be because we have got a season to watch and stuff to talk about. But until then, I'll see you later. Bye-bye.